All right. Good evening, good evening, good evening. What's up, guys? Thank you for I appreciate that. My name is Tony Villafane. I'm the youth pastor and leadership development pastor at the same time here at Gateway Church. I'm honored to be with you this evening. For those of you I haven't, there's some new faces for me personally, so I'm really excited that you have chosen to be here today. And we have some really, really good content that we're going to be going through. And also part of the reason why we can say it's really, really good is because it's not ours. We are kind of stealing it. And so we'll kind of talk a little bit more of that in just a second. But I oversee the 7th through 12th grade youth group here. We have youth group that meets on Wednesday nights. And then I oversee the Develop Leadership program, which houses this seminar that we are having here tonight. And so the Develop Leadership program has a lot of different elements to it. If you're not familiar with it, we have these quarterly seminars that take place for you, the leader who wants to grow in very poignant and tangible ways and topics. Then we have a Influence Experiment podcast that is on Spotify and Apple Music and our church website. And that's a monthly podcast that releases with different, again, various topics and conversations that we have there, along with some interns that want to take a huge step in saying, I want to be poured into and invested into for a significant period of time. And so we have developed interns as well that commit themselves to Gateway Church as well. So that's just a couple different pieces that make up the Develop Leadership program here at Gateway Church. And so you are a part of the Develop Leadership program by being here tonight. So welcome. So glad you're here. I want to introduce, or I want him to introduce himself, my partner in working through this seminar, as he has graciously said yes to joining on tonight.
I told Tony I would help him once every year with something, and this is just the one I had to do. So I'm not that excited to be here, to be honest with you. No, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm actually a little nervous to be here because we're talking about leadership and dysfunctions in a team. And part of what I do here is I'm responsible for a lot of the team here at Gateway. So there's a lot of people here who are going to have a lot of ammo on me if I do not practice what I preach tonight, and I'm a little bit anxious about it. But I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Gateway Church, and what that means is I try my best to make sure that we set the table for people to meet Jesus whenever they're on this campus or whenever they interact with anything else that involves our church or our people. So I get the joy of leading most of our staff and helping equip them, getting them whatever they need so that they can do the hard work of ministry with everybody else. So excited to be here.
That's right. Come on. And so Johnny and I are going to tag team this day. So there's different segments that I'm going to have and then he's going to have. So we're going to be sharing the stage together. But just a couple of housekeeping things, like I said already, is plenty of sweet treats and vegetables and stuff and drinks back there. So please help yourself. Always feel free to get up and go get something. And so very informal in that way. Bathrooms, if you need it, you'll go out the hall. You can go immediately to your left. And there are both bathrooms there for you. And then if you're feeling tired, give the person permission on your left or your right to slap you on the wrist if they see you dozing off. And then if I see you dozing off, I have a spitball cannon actually back here. No, I don't. But there's going to be a ton of content today. I can almost promise you that you're not going to get tired by way of, you might get tired by fatigue because we have a ton of information that we're going to be throwing at you today, slightly on purpose. And so I want to kind of mentally prepare all of us that this is going to be a little bit of a fire hose of content. You have the packet in front of you and all of the notes, everything that's going to be on the slides, every single thing is on the slides or is on your packet. And so we want that for you specifically so that when you leave tonight and you're like, holy crap, like this is so much information, you just can go back and look through it all. And so we're going to go through a lot. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for you to process. There's going to be some table talk discussions. You'll see that pop up on the screen where we're going to say, hey, invitation now to process through some of the stuff that we just talked about. And so as we firmly believe that Jesus is the center of everything that we do here, including our leadership, we want to commit this time in this space to him. So would you join your hearts with mine in a word of prayer as we begin? And so, Jesus, we thank you so much that you indeed are here. You are present, and we thank you for that. Your grace is so abounding in our lives, even when we don't deserve it. We are leaders that are so imperfect. We are leaders that mess up all the time. We are leaders that fail. We are leaders that are selfish, and yet you still want to use us. How humbling is that? And so, guys, we take a moment to look at how we can further ourselves as team members, as teammates, as brothers and sisters in the faith, learning about dysfunction and brokenness and how we can work towards reconciliation and mending and strengthening each other in the name of Jesus, that we may be present right now as you are so present with us. That we may take something out of this time together, that we may look, by the end of this 2 hours, that we may look just a little bit less like ourselves and a little bit more like you. We give it to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. So, like I said, there's going to be a lot of stuff. I'm going to hit an introductory piece, then Johnny's going to come up and hit us with our first 2 dysfunctions. You see that pyramid there? You're going to keep referring back to that pyramid as we go along. But before we dive in, I have a question for you. I would love to start us off with some discussion. So this is invitations to process, to dialogue, and to interact with each other. So I need your help around the table right now. Can you, number 1, define dysfunction? And then number 2, would you be able to say what dysfunction leads to on teams? What is dysfunction, and what does it lead to when you see on teams? Discuss for a few minutes. Go. All right. Hey, I hope that you had, again, an introductory moment with your table. Maybe some of you had a very profound definition of what dysfunction is. Maybe you struggled with what is a definition of dysfunction. Regardless, I have a definition for you at the very top of your packets. It's based off of Merriam-Webster Dictionary, so it has to be right. And so here we go. The definition of dysfunction is this: abnormal or unhealthy interpersonal behavior or interaction within a group. Abnormal or unhealthy interpersonal behavior. So dysfunction is what we would say is abnormal or unhealthy within a specific group or setting. That could be your family. That could be your team at work. That could be a team, a sports team. That could be on your street if you have a group that meets on a regular basis. That could be any type of group that has unhealthy interpersonal behavior. Honestly, it doesn't take long to know, and you can start thinking about some of the dysfunctions or some of the abnormal or unhealthy interpersonal behavior that you might see. It doesn't take long, right? We see a lot more brokenness than we would care to admit in our world. But that, as a baseline level, that is dysfunction. So before we dive into the 5 dysfunctions, we want to talk just for a moment about team culture, because when I think about team culture, it can be a difficult concept to kind of unpack. But I think about this line at the bottom that says here: I could be more effective a member of the team, if others would just shut up and go away. And sometimes we feel like, man, the culture would be so much better if you weren't a part of it. That's really mean to say. But, I mean, if we're being really raw and honest, there's some people that really grind our gears, right? There's some people that can really get under our skin. And I could be more effective on this team if you would just shut up and go away. And so what do we do in our teams? What do we do in our families? What do we do in our small groups when we have someone that's just like, I really want you just to go away, please? What do we do with that? What is the culture that is shaping up to look like? How are we a part of that culture? And so a couple of things to think about when we think about team culture. Again, before we dive headlong into these functions, let's look at the 30,000 foot. So here's what that is. Team culture is made up of the values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors shared by a team. A culture is made up of these, and there's more words than this that you can inevitably add into this. You could probably scribble in a couple other ideas that make a culture in your mind, and maybe you should even do that as something pops into your head, write in the margins all over the place tonight. And so values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. This is what makes up a significant portion of your culture. So maybe think about your workspace. And what comes to mind when you think about the values and the beliefs, the attitudes and the behaviors? When you think about those types of things, that is what starts to accumulate as your team culture. Whether it's good or not, it's what ends up being a part of your team culture. Think about this. Culture is a difficult concept to grasp because it's generally unwritten and unspoken. So yes, team culture can be the values or your mission statement. Like, these are the things that are gun-ho about us, and we are driving very confidently forward. But think about this, though. When we think about culture, it also can be many things that are just unspoken and unwritten. Have you ever walked into a room, have you ever walked into a space or organization, and you've had this feeling of just something feels off here? Something just doesn't sit right. And you observe and you interact and you leave that and you're like, that was for what? I can't pin it. Something was off. Chances are it had something to do with the culture. There are many times unwritten rules that we see and unwritten concepts that happen in teams, and they're birthed out of, maybe it's the head leader, maybe it's the group of people, maybe it's someone who doesn't have as much influence on the team, or maybe someone has all the influence, but culture is just built amongst the team naturally, and it's a pretty unstoppable force at times. And so if team culture and this thing that we are trying to grapple with, it can be unstoppable at times, what do we do with that? How do we look to build a healthy culture? How do we look to build a culture that's intentional towards, in our context as Jesus followers, godliness, honoring who God is over our life, looking to represent Jesus to a broken world? Couple of quotes for you from Patrick Lencioni, who wrote the book 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He said this: if you could get all the people in an organization rowing in the same direction, you could dominate any industry in any market against any competition at any time. It's about the culture moving in one specific direction. It's about the team members being in one accord, going in unity together, rowing together. The power that is in unity is ridiculous. And you've seen a team that's been unified. I hope you have, at least. Many of us have probably seen a team that wasn't. Many of us have seen a team that is borderline toxic. We've seen leaders who are borderline toxic. And if we're being honest, there have been moments that we could have been borderline toxic as we contribute to the culture. But if you get everyone rowing in the same direction, that is what we are going for tonight. Michael Jordan said this: talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. Love that. Because it's so true. Talent can win games, but as the season progresses, the star player of the team, is it rare that one star player could really carry the team on their back and win championship? Yes, it can happen. But way more often than not, it's because the team is synced together. And they say, we have a common vision, common goal, common ethos, and we are running together. Culture. And where we are going tonight is to unpack the 5 dysfunctions that Patrick Lencioni, like I said, I believe the content is incredibly good because it's not our own original content. Literally, here's what's happening is that this is a book. It's like a 200 some odd page book. Not 200, it's 160. And we're going to give you the whole book in an hour and 35 minutes. And so that's why I say it's going to be a little bit like a fire hose, because we believe that these concepts are so vital and so instrumental to the healthiness of a team that we want to share them all with you so that you can go back and chew on it and marinate on it and process it with a boss, process it with a team member, process it with a family member as you go. So as you see, there's that pyramid for you, and so we're going to unpack this pyramid one at a time. And so we're starting at the bottom of the pyramid, and we're going to work our way up. And so Johnny's going to kick us off with our first dysfunction. Are you guys ready for this fire hose? Are you ready to roll? We leaning in together? All right, let's do it. Come on now.
Ready for this? Are you ready for this? Yeah. I'm excited for it, and something Tony said that really resonated with me is that idea of a team rowing. We didn't practice this. That team rowing in unison, and I get so excited because I even look at this group, and sometimes I can feel like these things are so siloed and so alone, and what are we even going to do? Like, I don't know anybody that's thinking the way I'm thinking. And then I'm assuming a lot of us have some sort of faith structure in this room. A lot of us call Jesus our Lord. And look at the group around you. You are not alone. We can do some crazy cool things together. So it excites me very, very much. So I don't know what just happened to my microphone, but I'm going to keep going. So here we go. I hope that these things also, there's going to be a tendency for you to think only in the lens of your workplace tonight, because it's the easiest thing. And so much of us, I know myself, I wrap everything about me into what I do, sadly. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, am I a good father or a husband? I think, what do people think of me production-wise at work? That's not a good thing. It's something I'm dealing with. But our natural tendency to put all of our thoughts and values into how will this make me a better employee, for a lot of you, a better employer, please spend time there. That is what tonight is for, to a degree. But if at any time tonight your mind starts wandering to, wow, that would make me a better mom in an area I've been failing or a better friend in my friend circle, at least while I'm talking, please let your mind wander to that. Tony might not like that, but if you need to go make a phone call, go do it. If you realize something tonight that you have utterly failed at, there is grace for you. And there's things in this list that I'm going to talk about that I am failing at, but I'm working on. So whatever that hits you tonight, just let it go. Keep your mind there. Spend some time on it. Ignore the next 5 points, because I believe that that's what the Holy Spirit would have for you tonight. So here we go. These tiers are tough. And each one of them, we're going to take a look at some symptoms. And I'm going to hit a lot of them. And I don't want you to get depressed. I want you to resonate with something if it sounds like you, so that you can recognize that it might be something you need to deal with. But then we're going to follow it with some practical ways to pull ourselves up out of the pit of those symptoms, okay? So absence of trust is the basis of the dysfunction of any team, the absence of trust. One definition that Patrick uses in his book is that trust is the confidence among team members that their peers' intentions are good and that there's no reason to be protective or careful around the group. That's a scary possibility. I don't know if I've worked with many teams in my life that have true trust, where you don't have to be protective or careful at all because there's such confidence in those around you. And as a result of this trust, people in your group, again, whether that's your work group or whether that's your marriage or your friend circle or you and your kids, they can then focus their energy completely on the task at hand rather than being disingenuous or political or whatever that looks like. So trust is so important. And humor me real quick, and I'm going to ask for words that you yell back at me. Please don't yell at me. I'm going to ask for a word, though. Think back to a time in your life where you maybe had a job. Maybe you have a current job. Don't talk about that one if you're like sitting with your employees right now. Maybe a past job or a sports team when you were younger. A friend circle you were in where you didn't trust one or more of the people in that group. Got it? It probably shouldn't take you that long. Everyone got it? Sadly, that's a quick one. The groups where you had to walk on eggshells at every turn. Give me some words that you are thinking. Just yell them out to describe that kind of group, how you felt in that kind of group. Anything. Defensive. Annoyed. Suffocated. Tired. Hopeless. Alone. Anxious. Angry. Fearful. Oppressed. Insecure. That was scary easy to come up with like 15 things that are, and we all felt probably each and one of those words. I doubt any of you heard one of those words and was like, I don't know what that means. We have felt those things, and friends, I don't want to spend time there. There's hope to not be there. But it's a little bit on us to provide spaces that are not like that. So I'm hoping as a leader tonight, because if you are here tonight, you are a leader, you don't want to contribute to your employees or your employer or your spouse or your kids or your friends saying any of those words about the culture that you have the potential to build. If you didn't, that's a heavy one I just put on you. You have the ability to create that culture. So now start thinking about, are your employees saying those things? We're going to pull out of the pit here. I just took us all deep down. I'm sorry, no one's crying yet, but we're gonna hang in. Here are some symptoms that I want to talk about in regards to this absence of trust. And again, don't beat yourself up, but if you need to resonate with it, that's okay. Poor leaders, I think, hide their weaknesses and their mistakes, and they hesitate to ask for help. Poor leaders jump to conclusions about intentions, and they rarely assume the best. For example, have you ever looked at a decision that someone on your team is making, or a spouse or a kid, and while they're making the decision, you think to yourself, that's not going to go well. They have no idea what they are doing. Pretty common thought, right? And in all honesty, because you guys are probably good at what you do, you're probably right. You probably know a better way to do it, and they're probably doing a class act job of messing it up. But if we continue to make assumptions about people instead of giving them opportunities to grow, and in a helpful way maybe step in as their direct report or whatever to maybe guide a conversation or help them, you're never going to have that trust with that person. And that's a tough spot to be at. Stop making assumptions, because not only will you make trust impossible for the person, but you'll probably build a culture where that person will never feel comfortable coming to you for help as well. If you have a boss that's continually saying, dumb idea, are they ever going to come to you for help in anything? I would guess not, because they're going to assume that you have a closed-off mentality, that you just like making people feel small, and it's not going to help in the long term. The next one is you'll have team members of yours, they're afraid to ask for help. That's what we just talked about. Next, there's skills and experiences not shared. Poor leaders don't share their skills and experiences. It's selfish, and again, I think a lot of us, if not all of us, have a relationship with Jesus in this room. And do you guys think you were gifted so you could build yourself up and build the kingdom of you? Or do you think you were gifted so that you could build up others? I think we all know the answer to that one, but it's hard. We're not supposed to hoard our abilities, and there's also this danger of using your abilities and your skills only to help those that can help you up the ladder. I think I'm pretty okay at washing dishes, and sometimes I work here at Gateway Church, if you didn't know that. Sometimes I'll walk through the kitchen, and there will be a lot of dishes. And I'll do them. But 6 to 9 times out of 10, I'm hoping someone walks by and says, oh, what a servant leader Johnny is. Oh, he does all that and washes dishes? And I hope it's Scott most of the time, because he's who I report to. So I'm hoping he's like, when it comes time for my annual review, he'll be like, you messed up a lot, but those dishes look really good. So I use my skills and abilities when someone can help me up. I can go home that same day and see the giant pile of dishes in my sink at home, I won't touch them. Because what do I have to get from my wife? I'm not getting a raise from my wife. I don't have to prove anything. She's not helping me up the ladder. And you see how all of a sudden I put myself in a position where I hoarded my skills for the people who can help me, and I didn't want to bless the woman that I have committed my life to serving. Because what's in it for me? And I've missed the point of there's nothing in it for me besides don't be a whatever bad word you want to fill in that blank, okay? I've missed the point. I could get a back rub. You know my life way too much. But yes, that is a possibility. Yeah. Relational equity with your boss and your direct reports is surface level at best. Poor leaders have little to no equity with their direct reports or their boss. Think of it, maybe some of you have an employee or a friend that you are having a hard time breaking into their circle of trust and finding out what really makes them tick. They're a decent employee. They do their job fairly well. They rarely miss a mark, but you can't keep shaking the idea that they have next level potential, but they refuse to believe in themselves and take an opportunity to do so. That's just surface level. You're just wondering, why is this person not doing better? As a boss, you can choose at that moment to dive deep, or you can stay in that surface place forever. You can leave the office and be frustrated and be like, maybe I just need to let this person go because they're not going to achieve anything else. Or maybe you could ask them a question and say, hey, tell me about your childhood. And that employee looks at you and says, I can't believe you asked that, but my dad was in a car accident when I was a 5-year-old, and he lost his ability to speak, so I've never really heard my dad say, I love you. And my mom was a really talented lady, but because of his deficiencies, she had to give up her dream job, and she didn't finish school so that she could handle being wife and mom at the same time. And then all of a sudden, you're looking at this employee that you were about to let go because you didn't think they had it in them, and you realize they've never heard I love you from a father. And they've been shown by the actions of their mother that sometimes it's best to just put your head down and do what you have to do to get by. So they've had no example of what it looks like to take the bull by the horns and run their life. It's not their fault, but you didn't ask. You didn't pull them up out of it. So poor leaders stay surface level with their people at all times, and you're going to stay there forever. Poor leaders have a lack of healthy debate in their environments. Lack of debate is an indicator that there is a lack of trust, and I understand why we don't do this more. My biggest reason is that because I think debate leads to me being hurt or that I'm going to hurt someone else, and I'm terrified of that because I want everyone to think I'm awesome. So I avoid it. Thank you, Kim. She just said, you are. Thank you, I appreciate it. This is a different tier. We're going to talk about the illusion of everything's okay. We'll deal with that later. There's this concept that we're going to talk about a little bit called invulnerability. It was kind of a new one for me. And invulnerability is the idea that you can't ever be hurt or you can't ever be challenged. And there's this quote I want to put up. It says, teamwork begins by building trust. The only way to do that is to overcome our need for invulnerability. We all need to overcome our need to never be wounded, injured, or harmed. And if you call Gateway home and you were here a few weeks ago, I actually talked about this. I get it. It's natural to avoid pain, to avoid stress, to avoid the anxiety, but to love well and lead well. We looked at this phrase, first it hurts, and then it changes you. We cannot dance around our jobs and our families just hoping that smooth sailing is going to happen. I hope for it. You can pray for it. But tough talks aren't bad. Tough talks aren't bad. So that was a little dark. I'm going to pull you up. Here's some wins in this level, this absence of trust part of the pyramid. Good leaders are vulnerable in their weaknesses, and they try to grow and surround themselves with others that might help fill in the gaps. It is not weakness, friends, to say that you have a deficiency in an area. It's just dumb. I don't know a better way to say it. Good leaders assume the best in others and hope to see the best version of that person in time. Would you rather have a boss that gives up on you every time you mess up or you don't measure up? Would you rather have a spouse that says, you could do better, I'm going to find a new one? Would you rather have a parent that continually says, you're not your brother? No one wants that. You want someone that sees the big picture. You want someone that sees the potential of what you could be. And you want that person cheering you on. Good leaders are open-handed with everything they have. I'll give you a small example of this. There's 2 churches in our area that I communicate with very, very often. One's about, I'll save that. I go to both of these churches with asks for help very often because I know what I don't know, and I ask them for help when I need it. One of them is very open-handed with me. Every time I call, Johnny, thanks for calling. What do you need? I need this. I'll get right on that. And if they can't, they'll find someone to help me. And sometimes it's the littlest thing, like, what kind of signs did you buy for Easter this year? To, I need to see all your documentation for how you run your entire organization, because I need to copy and paste some things. And they're pretty okay with giving me anything I need. The second church I call about once a year, and I usually need something very small from them, and it's been a no every time. The first church is about 26,000 people. The second one's about 8. Part of me wonders why the people that are open-handed are thriving and growing, and the people that continue to hoard their resources and not help people are just dying. You don't want to be the place that holds what you have. It's going to kill you. Good leaders feel comfortable asking for help, and they're not afraid to say, I'm sorry. Don't be a robot. I don't know a better way to say it, but be empathetic. Own your stuff when you need to. Say you're sorry when you need to. Good leaders have healthy and deepening relationships with people behind and beside the role of boss and direct report. Any fathers in the room tonight? All right, I'll put you on the spot. See if this resonates with you. Have you ever gone home, you get to the dinner table, and you've said, kids, how was your day? And then if it ends there, you're good. And then maybe you'll add, did you do anything fun? And then, time for bed. I don't have many more questions in my repertoire as a father. I am this robot who is doing almost nothing to dig into my kids' lives. So they can just find dad, went outside. It is just this thing. Even with my own children, I am so tempted most nights because of my tiredness or whatever to stay surfacey at best and not dive in. When it doesn't take much effort for me to be like, when I was driving in today, I saw the skateboards outside. Did you guys go skateboarding? And then they're 20 minutes into this crazy story about whatever happened with skateboarding. Which father would you want? Good leaders have healthy debates happening around them is the last win here. Here's some practical things that, just for this one. Maybe, and these were practicals that I wrote, so maybe they're just for me, but they might be for you too. Maybe you need to admit to yourself and maybe to your team that you have an area or many areas to grow in. Is it possible that you need to even admit to yourself tonight that there's an area that you are not crushing it and need to take some steps to grow in? Second, maybe you need to name the boss or employee that you have that you have given up on, and you need to adjust your view with them and ask if there's hope for them to become something more. Lastly, maybe you need to have a meeting with your entire team, maybe your spouse, or maybe just an individual that has nothing to do with work or an agenda. Maybe you just need to spend some quality time with someone close to you and just learn about their life, because something crazy can happen when you start to get to know people at a crazy level. So there we go. That is the first one. And we're going to take a minute now to talk at your table in an effort to maybe get us out of our shell and be vulnerable for the first time. Here's a quick exercise, and we're going to take like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to put 2 things on the screen. And by I mean Tony. Thank you, bud. Could be tough. This is a safe space. No one's going on Facebook tonight with like, Shelly said she's, okay? Safe space at your table. Share, if you can, with everyone your biggest strength that you bring to your team. Maybe this is your work team, maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's your friend circle. Pick one of them, doesn't matter. Share the biggest strength you bring. It's okay, this isn't cocky, this is confidence. And then second, what is the biggest weakness you have that usually drags that team down or holds them back? Again, this is not self-deprecating, this is being honest with our emotions, okay? Good luck. All right, team, here we go. We're gonna dive into the next tier. Does everyone feel like they have figured out trust? They're ready to go be trusting in their work environment and home environment? You're good to go? You figured it out? Vince, you got it figured out? Good deal. All right, that was a big one, and it's the foundation for a reason. A lot of what we're going to talk about tonight hinges on this trust piece, so don't forget it. Use that as a lens to look at the next one, but we're going to jump in to the next tier. The next tier is fear of conflict, and I talked about this a little bit. I'm always fearful of hurting other people or being hurt, so I'm very, any other conflict averse people in here, just, nope, not my thing. Hate it. I'll do anything to avoid conflict at all costs. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm conflict averse in my marriage, the way I parent, and sadly often with our team here at Gateway, but it's a hurdle I think we can all probably work harder at jumping over so we can succeed. So fear of conflict, here's a definition of what I think healthy conflict could look like. All great relationships, the ones that last over time, require productive conflict in order to grow. They just need it. They just need it to make it happen. And just like the last one, here's some symptoms. Again, don't get too dark on these. We're going to pull up at the end. But here's some things that maybe will resonate with you. These are some things that poor leaders do, or poor leaders create an environment where there is lots of tension, but no constructive conflict. You ever been in a place where it's like, this sucks, and you don't feel hope at all about anything getting better? Poor leaders create environments where back-channel politics and personal attacks thrive. They don't just happen occasionally. They are roaring all the time. This next one's a tough one for me. The meeting after the meeting to vent. Whether that's with your spouse or, I do this with my kids all the time. My wife and I will have a tense, whatever you want to call it. It happened just the other night at dinner time. A little tense. She went in to carry something into the kitchen, and I looked at my boys and I was like, what's wrong with mom? What is wrong with me? I don't do that often, but it just came out. We had this meeting after the meeting where I was looking for affirmation from my 10, 8, and 6-year-old. I'm like, who's this crazy lady who was right the whole time? I was just pissed. Good leaders don't do that. Bad leaders make it so that arguments make people uncomfortable. We used to joke around Gateway a little bit on our team. Thankfully, it's been a few years, but our staff meetings are on Tuesdays, and we sit at this long rectangle table, like a dining room table thinking, right? And for years, Scott would sit here, and I would sit here. People called us mom and dad because of how awkward we made it and how often we fought. Our arguments made people so uncomfortable that they'd be like, mom and dad aren't doing well today. What a poor environment we had built where our staff was like, this feels like the awkward dinner table, and we're trying to like equip these people. Arguments shouldn't make people that uncomfortable. You shouldn't have fear of hurting someone's feelings or having yours hurt play into the process. And this doesn't mean that you should just be a bulldozer and have no regard for other people. And it also doesn't mean on the other end of the pendulum that you need to develop this heart of stone just so you can get things done. But it does mean that you can't dance around things that can lead to progress. or movement or anything because you're scared to have a sensitive conversation. That's not going to drive the ball down the field if you're scared to do it. The next one, when harmony exists, it's because nobody on the team has shared their true feelings. I don't know what you guys do for a living, but maybe someone on your team presented the budget for the next year or the P&L report for the last 6 months, or maybe in your home someone presented the vacation schedule, and everyone just says, looks good. And then the meeting moves on and everyone is furious because everyone had something to say. It wasn't great, but you just wanted to keep the meeting going. You wanted to keep the calm. You wanted to maintain the peace. And all of a sudden, everyone is a mess because no one felt comfortable enough to embrace a potential conflict that could lead to a positive outcome. Artificial harmony is a disaster. You've probably all lived in it at some level, but it's not harmony at all, is it? It is not at all. There's some wins. Good leaders have a renewed focus on constructive conflict only. Stop fighting about dumb stuff. Get better. Good leaders accept that some people have skills that others don't have, including yourself, potentially. Good leaders start addressing concerns directly with the person that the concern relates to instead of others. I put it this way: start growing, stop complaining. And trust me, I am talking loudly to myself on this one. Good leaders are not afraid to disagree, challenge, and question one another. But I'll caution you on this one, and this is a lesson I learned from premarital counseling that me and my wife do every other year, it seems like. When you stop fighting fair, you start losing progress. So disagree, challenge each other, but fight fair. Fight fair. Good leaders don't go behind other people's backs. Good leaders get ideas from all members of the team, top to bottom. It's important to do that. You've all heard the stories of the good ideas that come from the janitor at the company. It's good to value that. But I'm also saying don't forget recognition that you know who the decision makers are and who the advice givers are. You know the system, you know the structure. But if you put yourself in a position where you can only get advice from that one person, it's just not healthy. So, yeah, don't play politics. That could go a lot of angles, but I'm just going to leave that there. You know your politics at your work environment. You know the politics in your home. It rarely ends well. Here's some more practicals. Challenge the idea, not the person. Sounds easy, but how many times, let's say Tony comes into the office tomorrow, says, hey Johnny, student ministry's been growing. We're pushing 100 kids each weekend or each Wednesday, and we don't have the space. So I think we're just going to tell some students to go find a new church because we're full. I could respond to that one of two ways. I could say, you're an idiot. Or, man, I hear you, but do you think we could maybe think through that a little bit more, beta test some other options? There's got to be something that we could try. Which one do you think would make him feel a little bit better? Even if his idea was the dumbest thing on the history of dumb ideas, which that would be a very dumb idea. Please don't ever suggest that one. But there's two ways to handle that. Challenge the idea, don't challenge the person. They have value. Don't make them feel small. Next practical. If everyone is on the same page at the beginning, it's probably not going to be very interesting. It's kind of a confusing little tagline, but what I'm trying to say here is be wary of the situations where everyone is on the same page very quickly, because there's a chance that you have that artificial harmony going on, and someone is just being like, let's go. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it works where everyone is miraculously on the same page, let's go full bore, but be wary of those times because someone might not be telling you. So sometimes if you're in that meeting or that situation, probably definitely works in a marriage relationship. If you ever finish a conversation and been like, you good? Yeah, I'm good. And then 12 seconds later, no, I'm not good at all, actually. Just be wary of those times where everyone feels on the same page. Next, agreement is the destination, debate and discussion pave the road. And I don't even know if I love the phrase agreement is the destination, but what he's saying is we want to be in unity at some level on this. We want to move forward. We want to row that boat together, but we have to have debate and discussion to get there. It's not just going to magically happen. So as leaders, you got to have the thick skin for it. This is not something that's for the weak at heart. But we're built different. You're built different. You're here because you're built different. You want to get better at this. Assume positive intent. Might be my most important one, but I'm not even going to talk about it much more. There's nothing else to say. Assume positive intent. Next, aim for social, intellectual, and professional integration of all members of the team. Basically, this is another way to say everyone has a lot to give. So maybe entertain giving shots to people who you've written off in the past. Get everyone on board. And last one, express appreciation every time you feel it. The more you flex that muscle, the more you express that appreciation, the more you feel it, the more it's going to come around, and it's going to build a team where potentially conflict can be had a little bit more because you are just a kind person who is calling out the good. So when you need to have that awkward conversation to maybe call out some of the rough, they're not immediately defensive. They're like, oh no, this person loves me. This person cares for me. This person tells me how awesome I am. They have my best intent in their heart, right? So express appreciation. And we're going to do a kind of a weird table time. There is not much chat here, but we're going to do something that our staff does here that I love. It's one of my favorite things we do as a team, that express appreciation piece. Some of you are going to be really good at this. Some of you are going to struggle with it. But on your table, there are a bunch of thank you cards or a bunch of I was thinking of you cards. There was a bunch of somethings. So we're going to take the next 4-ish minutes and think about your team. Maybe that's your work team. Maybe that's your a child. Maybe that's a spouse. And if you haven't flexed that appreciation muscle, don't make this creepy, but and make it appropriate. So if you're like a 54-year-old CEO in here, maybe don't send one to the 17-year-old female intern, but someone that's close to your circle that you know you need to appreciate. And we're going to spend a minute just writing them a thank you note for something you appreciate. And I got these today. For those of you who are in the room who are like, I don't even know where to start. These are baby thank you cards from Hallmark. There's only enough room to write 6 words. So if that's you and you're like, all I can say is thinking of you today, and you don't know how to say anything more, these are for you. So come on up if you need one, or I'll walk around with some if that stresses you out writing a whole letter to someone. So here we go. And I'm reminded of this thing we talked about a few weeks ago where you can choose to be different than the world. The world will be a place where status quo is acceptable. You can be a part of the world where digging in with your employees or your spouse is not needed, not expected. You can be a leader that doesn't have to thank your employees or be appreciative of them. Or there's this part in Scripture that I love that Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he says, not so with you. You're going to be different. So there's a lot of leadership things that are probably new here tonight that the world probably wouldn't talk about too much, but I think Jesus would spend some time talking about. So I'm excited for you guys. Those were my 2. I'm going to come back up at the end a little bit, but the rest of the time is going to be Tony's. So hopefully you glean something out of that. If there's anything in that last section or 2 that you've struggled with and want to talk to me about later, I'm still struggling with them, and I might not know much more than you, but I'd love to talk about it with you. So thanks for listening. You were great.
All right, how we hanging in? Like we said, this is a fire hose of information. The concept of invulnerability, we could park on that one for hours. By a show of hands, does anyone struggle with being vulnerable? Yep. That one is the absence of trust and the fear of conflict. Those alone, as the bottom two rungs of this pyramid, we could sit on that forever and just process that. So that's why we would say that as you sit with the content, as you move off from tonight and into the next day, what are you going to choose to do? What's an intentional step that you want to do? So maybe you could, if the invulnerability piece was really hitting you, you can tune me out. I'm not offended. Just keep thinking about what does vulnerability look like in your workspace, in your family environment, as a teammate, etc. So maybe for you that you need to sit on conflict, and maybe you need to go, as John said earlier, go make a phone call right now of someone that you need to go resolve some conflict with. And so know that there's freedom and space as we kind of keep on just going, because we are only at rung 2 and we're hitting rung number 3. So here we go. The third one is lack of commitments. Number 3, lack of commitments. From Patrick Lencioni in his book, he says this: in the context of a team, commitment is a function of two things: clarity and buy-in. Clarity and buy-in. So let me ask you guys this. Have you ever been a part of a meeting and you walked out of that meeting and you were like, I'm so unclear on what was going on in that meeting? Has anyone ever been a part of a meeting like that before? Yeah, like hands up for sure. Have you ever led the meeting that was unclear? Yep. There we go. I appreciate the honest hands, because we all can do that, right? We have ideas in our head, and then we try to communicate it, and it just doesn't connect, and our people looking at us are like, they're just, what in the world is going on, and how do I track what you're saying? And you're like, why aren't you tracking what I'm saying? And we just want clarity, and we want buy-in. Maybe you've been a part of a team, and maybe you are a part of a team right now that you've had a ton of buy-in. There's a ton of clarity, and it's making you more impassioned and excited about your job and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I hope that's the case maybe with where you're at right here and right now. The next quote: the two greatest causes of a lack of commitment are the desire for consensus and the need for certainty. This is two fascinating concepts: the desire for consensus and the need for certainty. So when we are looking towards commitments, sometimes, I don't know, maybe if you're like me, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to commit to something until I know everybody is rubber stamp, ready to go, let's go all in. And if one person doesn't like it, I'm like, oh guys, we got to stop. We have to make sure that one person is on board with this. The need for 100% consensus can be very unhealthy. Or the need for absolute certainty. We are not taking one step forward until we are 110% sure that this is going to have a 100% success rate. Have you ever seen that before? Where that has stagnated decisions, or it has impeded the ability for success because you need 100% consensus, or because you need absolute certainty. Let's look at some of the symptoms of what this looks like, of having a lack of commitment. So here we go. Number 1, members are confused about purpose. So maybe you're the boss, and maybe there are some people in your organization, on your team, in your family, that are confused about purpose, about why we are here. Maybe you're the one that's wondering, I know what I'm doing, but I have no idea why I'm doing it. Maybe that's you. Maybe you have felt that before. Second one, you revisit discussion and decisions. And so there's just a repetitive nature. You come back and back to the same conversation. You're like, come on, can we please just move on from this conversation? Maybe that happened today in a meeting, and you're feeling that. You're still feeling annoyed from what happened in that meeting. Direction and priorities are muddy. Again, there is a lack of certainty of what exactly is our direction. Number 4, fear to take the wrong action. There is a fear to take the wrong action. And so because I'm fearful, I'm just gonna sit on the fence, and I'm not gonna make a move one way or the other. I remember when I was in high school, Yeah. When I was a senior in high school, Johnny's stories were about his wife and his kids. I have a wife. I have no kids, so I can't share kid stories, but I can share baseball stories because I played baseball for 15 years. And so when I was a senior in high school, I actually was just wondering, do I want to play baseball my senior year of high school? God was kind of pulling me more in the direction of youth ministry. He kind of gripped my heart at the age of 15 to pursue the youth ministry and go to Bible college. And so as I was kind of growing in my desire for ministry, I was like, should I just go and do that more and not pursue baseball? So over the summer, my junior to senior year of high school, I was like waffling back and forth of should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? Should I not do it? And then finally, my mom just like looked at me like 2 weeks before the school year was about to begin. I had to give an answer to my coach for fall ball, and my mom said to me like, Tony, stop sitting on the fence. Just make a decision, because if you make a decision, either one of two things is going to happen. You're going to go to this side of the fence, as God is going to say, attaboy, that's the right decision. He's going to affirm that and give you peace. If you go to the other side of the fence and it happens to be the wrong decision, God's going to say, attaboy, thanks for making a decision. He's going to kick your butt to the other side. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And I trusted my mom. I made the decision. I said, I'm going to play. And it was the best decision I ever could have made. That spring season, we ended up winning a championship. Me and my best friend in high school, he was our star pitcher, and I was the center fielder, and we had this dynamic duo together, hanging out. We were captains, and it was a phenomenal season. It was a trying season. God taught me so much in that senior year of baseball versus my first 3 years of high school. I grew so much in those 4 or 5 months of my baseball season. I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't play baseball. Sometimes we just gotta pick a decision, even if we're not 100% confident. Someone in here needs to hear that. You're waiting for 100% certainty and it ain't going to come. You have to be willing just to make a decision. So what's the root of our lack of commitment? Well, generally speaking, within a team unit or within a family unit, we could say that there is a ambiguity. What is ambiguity? Where there is just an unknowingness of what's going on. There's options over here, there's options over here, there's not muddiness over here, there's voices all over the place, the rules don't seem clear. It's just an ambiguity in our culture. And I'm wondering, do you sense that? Do you feel that in your team? Is there ambiguity in what you do? That could be a root of why there's a lack of commitment, because what you're trying to cast is very ambiguous. Maybe if you are a parent and you're trying to get your kids to do something and they're just not doing it, well, maybe it's because you're not being clear. Maybe you think you are being clear, but maybe you should try to ask your kids, hey, what do you think I'm trying to say right now? See what they say. If they can't regurgitate it back to you, then it's ambiguous. Why not look towards clarity, which is the wins that we are looking at today? So let's go ahead and take a quick second. This is a 60-second exercise. This is just kind of with you. Think about this for a second. What is currently ambiguous about your role? Just think about that for a quick second. What is currently ambiguous about your role on your team? We need to be careful that we are doing our best to be communicators of our goals, of our vision, of our values, of why we are here. Not just what we are doing, but why are we here? People can get behind like the what, like the minutia of tasks every single day. People can get behind that, but people way more can get behind the why of why we do things. At Lancaster Bible College, there's a group that takes care of the campus by way of mowing and snow plowing and painting, all that stuff like that. Well, one day I was walking across campus, and as I attended Lancaster Bible College, and I was given a tour, and I stopped one of the people who was kind of tending to the flowers, flower bed, and I said, I asked him, this wasn't planned. I almost wish it was, but it wasn't. I stopped and I said, like, hey, so tell us what you do as a student worker. And he said, yeah, I tend to campus, and I do what I can to beautify the campus. I was like, that's awesome. And I said, I put him on the spot. I was like, why do you do what you do? And he said, I do it so I can help campus be beautified to retain students to see that, hey, this is a beautiful place, you want to be here. I was like, that's an awesome answer. to help like recruit and retain students. Like that's not something a typical worker would probably think, but someone had invested that into them. Say it's not just what you are doing, but why you are doing it. So maybe there needs to be some clarity behind what and the why as well. Let's go to some wins. So clarity created around direction and priorities. Again, you can keep thinking in the what's and the why of doing things within your job, the direction and the priorities. How about alignments of your entire team in common objectives? Again, big tasks to try to complete. And not one to get too to freak out over, but to say, is there alignment of the entire team in their common objectives? Is the team able to say, here are the objectives that we are doing together or striving after together? Number 3, there's an ability to learn from mistakes. This is a big one. This goes back to the little bit of that fear of conflict. It's why there's a reason why it compounds on each other. Do you have an ability? Is there a culture in your team that you can learn from mistakes? In your family, is there grace in your family that there's a freedom to fail? And I'm not saying, there's permissibility to do whatever you want and make all the dumb and irrational decisions. No, let's not swing the pendulum. I think you know what I mean. That there is a freedom to say if you fail, or more properly, when you fail, you're not going to get shamed. You're not going to get judged. You're not going to get put down. You're not going to get the finger wagged in your face. Is that the culture that you are trying to cultivate in your home, in your team? And I hope if you are in a spot where you can't do a whole lot with this, I really pray and I hope that it's not coming above you, that there is a shaming happening. And I'm sorry if there is. And there's not a freedom to fail. Because this is a pivotal part of what it is to have a healthy team. Because we're all broken people, right? And we all make mistakes. Ability to learn, not just make mistakes, but learn from them. Number 4, can move forward without hesitation. Again, this is the moment where we're choosing not to have 100% clarity. We're not going to be able to have that with every single decision that we make all the time. And so just being able to say, hey, you know what? 90% is good enough. Let's go. And without hesitation. Because if we're continuously hesitating, we're not going to show confidence. Have you seen a leader that is always hesitating in their decisions? Do you struggle with hesitating in your decisions? Being a person who is willing to move forward. Again, this isn't, John used earlier, this isn't an idea of like cockiness. This is an idea of confidence. That you can move forward. This is what we're doing. Without hesitation. Last one. Can change direction without hesitation or guilt. What do I mean by that? Slightly different than the prior one. Is this idea that we're going this direction and then all of a sudden we go this direction. Hopefully not in a jarring, irrational, unwise decision, but no, we know this, that in cultures and teams and families, we have to pivot. We have to make decisions that are different. And so are we willing to say, you know what, we've looked at it, we've assessed it, we've understood this is now the proper direction to go, and we're going to go without hesitation, without guilt. Because there's always going to be someone who's not going to agree with your decision. True? But if we are held back by 100% consensus, and if we're held back by making sure we have 100% confidence, if we're held back by making sure that we don't ever disappoint someone, we ain't going to move anywhere. Your team isn't going to move anywhere. So you have to be willing to go forward without hesitation or guilt. Love this quote, though. This is humbling. The leader must be comfortable with the prospect of making a decision that ultimately turns out to be wrong. You got to be. And this is where humility comes into play. And when you learn that your decision is wrong, you take the L. You're humble about it, you learn from it, you course correct, you let someone slap you on the wrist even if that's the case, and learn how to be better. That's what excellent leaders are able to do. Let's look up some practicals. Number 1, establish a common purpose, goal, mission, values, etc. This is just a practice of, do you have a clear mission statement? Do you have a clear vision statement? Do you have clear values in your team and your organization? Is that clear that anyone on your team can recite your mission statements? Do you know what your organization's mission statement is? Maybe it's for thinking about your own family, and I know some families that come up with their own personal family mission statement or their own values that they want to live by. I think that's such an honorable and really cool thing to do, that you're going to sit down with your family or your spouse and go, hey, what do we want our family to be marked by? What is the clarity in which we are moving forward in? For me personally, I love having, again, my own personal life statements. That this idea that this is who I am at the core of who God's made me to be, and this is how I drive forward with all confidence and humility and intentionality. Do you have a personal mission statement or a life purpose statement? Maybe that's something that you could consider. Number 2, clear is kind. Love this one. Our former Kidman director, Mary Edwards, she would use this phrase over and over again as a reminder to herself and also to us as a team, saying we need to make sure what is the clearest way we can communicate something to someone. Because being clear is kind. So the opposite, I guess you could say, being ambiguous is rude. So be clear. Clear is kind. Number 3, keep the main thing the main thing. There's so many different discussions you can have in your small group, in your family dinner chat, in your team, in your huddle, in your meetings. But being willing, do you have an agenda? I'm a nerd. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. I love agendas, man. I love to know where we're going, how we're getting there, how long is each one going to take. Am I terrible at keeping track of those at times? Yes, but I love agendas. Okay, and so maybe you need to have an agenda to keep the main thing the main thing, or maybe you want to ask your boss if your meetings are all over the place. Maybe you need to ask your boss, hey, could you consider having an agenda? And saying it, obviously, in a kind way, but asking that question. Number 4, contingency and worst case scenario analysis. This is an interesting one where, practically speaking, okay, we have this idea, we're thinking through it, we're in the beta phase of what we're going to do. No one else knows about it, it's just this team. Okay, how can we think through the worst case scenario? That could be a really good thing to do. Now, obviously, it can become unhealthy when all you think is worst case ever, period. But are you willing to think through, okay, well, if this happens, how do we respond? And if it rains, what do we do then? And if this, thinking through worst case scenario. So maybe that's something that as an exercise, if you have a great idea, and you're like, okay, before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's think through some of the contingencies of what could happen and how would we respond. Number 5, low-risk exposure therapy. What in the world is that? Low-risk exposure therapy is this idea that, okay, if you have a team that is really hesitant in making decisions, and you're really hesitant in making sure, okay, there is 100% clarity or buy-in, maybe you just need to have some low-risk exposure therapy. Maybe you need to buy one of those giant Jenga sets and put it on the middle of your table and play Jenga together so that you can try having some risk in playing a game together. Or maybe you need to try a small event for just your team, and you're willing to run through it and say, whatever happens, happens, and we're just going to learn together. Do something that's low risk exposure just to get yourself out of your comfort zone. So speaking of comfort, let's have a conversation just for a few minutes. What is an area you would like to model more commitments in your place of work? This could be an uncomfortable question potentially, but the invitation in this space is just to be honest. And so, what is an area you would like to model more commitment in your place of work? You can control you. You can't always control others. So what can control in a healthy way? I don't say that in an unhealthy way. So talk about that just for a minute or two. Go. All right, moving on. Number 4. Let's do this. Also, is there a quote at the bottom that is not filled in on your end for number 3? Great, awesome. I guess it's on my end only then. Okay, number 4 is, here we go, avoidance of accountability. Dun, dun, dun. This one is difficult. This one is annoying. This one is, this one makes you want to cringe. Because no one likes being held accountable. No one likes getting like the magnifying glass pointed at them and saying this is what you did wrong or this is how you could improve. So we avoid accountability like it's the plague. Like if anyone is like me, I don't like accountability. And so let's dive into what a little bit of this is by way of a little caricature here that says this: to address this mistake, we must use the root cause analysis to begin. I'll say it's not my fault. I don't know about you, but again, we're really quick to point the blame, right? We're really quick to point the blame. It's in our nature, in our selfishness to protect ourselves and to not receive the blame. So let's go there of what this looks like. The essence of this dysfunction is the unwillingness of team members to tolerate the interpersonal discomforts that accompanies calling a peer on his or her behavior and have the more general tendency to avoid difficult conversations. To avoid interpersonal discomfort. Is that ever you? To avoid interpersonal discomfort. Let's look at some of the symptoms of what this looks like. Number one, team members are coasting. What do I mean by that? Is that people are just doing their thing. And they're coasting because there's no accountability of like, how are you doing better? What are your goals? What are your margins? How are you looking to improve? And there's not that accountability, so they're just coasting. And they're just kind of going to this apathetic, robotic nature. Maybe you see that in your workspace. Maybe you see this in your family. But team members are coasting. Tasks dragged out and missed deadlines. And so if there's a lack of accountability, deadlines are not really deadlines. They're kind of just suggestions. Been there, done that? They're kind of just suggestions. I don't know if that irks you. It should. But they're just suggestions, and tasks are just dragged out. Mediocre, average performance. Again, we're not looking for excellence. We're just looking to be normal. We're just looking for average. We're looking for mediocre. Maybe that's a symptom you see. There's no conflict, no confrontation, and no resolution. We've already talked about the conflict bit. Team achieves uninspired outcomes. What do I mean by that? Uninspired outcomes. You're achieving something, but there's not a whole lot of like motivation behind it. There's not a whole lot of passion behind it. Kind of goes back to that why that we talked about earlier. There's a what that we're doing, but there's not so much of a why of why we're doing it. Team is achieving uninspired outcomes. Or this one person carries the team. One person carries the team. And so the overarching problem, the roots of what we can identify in this avoidance of accountability, the root that we would submit is that there's low standards across the board. Just the idea that there are low standards that people aren't even trying to measure up to where that standard is. If the standard is here, the low standard is down here, and they're barely hitting that low standard. I think that we need to be careful that we're not putting up a standard of perfection, but we can't be willing to say the standard is down here when really it should be here. We need to work towards excellence in everything we do. Is there a standard in which we are working towards of excellence? And maybe that could be a root within your own character, a root within your own team. This one's not fun, but maybe you have to be honest with yourself. What are the standards that you carry? Is your life easy? And your leadership, is it easy because your standards are way too low? So what about some wins? How are we choosing to say, okay, what does a win look like of intentionality of I'm going to choose to hold myself accountable or my team members accountable or the people that I lead? Number one, I'm holding each other to standards for behavior and results. We are choosing to hold that line. We're not dropping it and dropping it and dropping it and dropping it. No, we're going to hold that line. That's not rigidity. That's just holding a standard of excellence. Again, we're making sure we're not going up to perfection in rigidity, but we're holding that line. Gives constructive feedback. Are you a person that is okay with receiving constructive criticism, or are you quick to get offended? Are you willing to give it as well? And again, in order to give constructive criticism, there has to be that baseline of trust. If there's an absence of trust, this is a whole thing is going to collapse, right? But giving constructive criticism is absolutely a win. Putting pressure on poor performance to improve. You might raise an eyebrow at this one. And what I mean by this is that if we continue, in a team, if you continue to allow a poor performer, and again, please be gracious with me with how I'm wording this, but if there is continually a poor performer on your team and they're continuing to get away with that poor performance and you're leading that team, what you are telling the rest of your team, that's okay and that's tolerable. There needs to be a standard of excellence that you are holding your team to, holding your family to. So you need to be able to put some pressure. Again, I say this graciously as I can, but put pressure on and say, hey, here is the constructive criticism of how here are things you're doing great in. And even if that list is like really, really small and things they're doing great in, try to find something to affirm. And then to say, like, here are things that we really need to see improvement in. And then here are some goals of which you can do. And then how can you be a part of that solution? How can I be a part of that solution in getting you towards where we want you to be? But putting pressure on poor performers to improve. High honor and respect given towards each other. High honor and respect. Man, we are so quick to think the worst in people. We're so quick, as Johnny talked about earlier, we're so quick to think about the negative in people or to judge them, judge the book by its cover. Man, we got to be willing to give high honor and high respect. To even the person that irks me on my team? Yeah. To the sibling that really bugs me to death? Yeah. We got to be willing to show high honor and respect. Easier said than done? Absolutely. But if not in this, looking to Jesus as our standard of excellence, giving high honor and high respect as Jesus would do, we ought to do the same. Healthy conflict and confrontation. Being willing to have healthy conflict and confrontation. For a shameless plug, again, I talked about the Influence Experiment as a podcast that comes out on a monthly basis. And so we just had 2 episodes released on exactly this, healthy conflict and confrontation. And so if you're looking for some content on how do I grow myself in conflict and confrontation, or you know someone who struggles with it and you want to kind of like slide it to them and say you should go take a listen to this, that is 2 episodes that are chock full of wise words. Again, I can say that because they're not my words, it's my guest who I brought on to the podcast. So that would be something to totally check out. And so practicals, let's just hit these super quickly because there's no blanks to fill in. Publication of goals and standards. Is there a space where you can celebrate some goals and standards as they're being hit on the regular? Maybe it's a staff meeting. Maybe it's in your communications and your emails or something like that, or your end of year reports where you can publish goals and standards that are happening. Simple and regular progress reports, and this is just meeting with a higher up or meeting with the person that you lead, and are you regularly connecting with them in progress reports. Team rewards, this one can be a little iffy, but is there a way that you're celebrating by reward? That can be a good thing and a healthy thing. Again, you gotta make sure it doesn't go towards that this performative driven, manipulative, I'm going for the rewards, but it could be something to think through. Number 4, allow team members to build accountability structure. And so maybe you need to have dialogue with your team members of how do we hold each other accountable. Really awkward conversation can come out of it, but sometimes the awkward conversation can be the best conversation for growth. So is there space for accountability within your team, your family, etc.? Holding your team accountable isn't an exercise in control, but in empowerment. I love this quote from Patrick Lencioni. It's a mindset shift. Accountability can absolutely be all this is pressure, and this is annoying, and this is task mastering. No. It's an opportunity of empowerment, giving the people on your team an opportunity to own the goals, own the mission, own what you're doing, and same for you as well. It's an opportunity of empowerment if your boss is putting pressure on you or a family member. Mindset shift. Difficult, but so needed. Let's hit this question. So how do you keep the line of healthy accountability without swinging to helicopter leading or rigidity? Heavy question, and we're only going to have like 3 minutes to answer it. How do you keep the line of healthy accountability without swinging to helicopter leading and rigidity? Take 3 minutes and go.
So last one at the tip of the pyramid is inattention to results. And we're going to look at this concept that there's the tendency for team members to care about something other than the collective goals of the group. They start getting individual status becomes more important than team status. Symptoms of this, things that you can recognize, red flags, team mentality stagnates or fails to grow. The pursuit of individuality. And let me get a little bit personal with this one. Have you ever had a friendship that just started to drift? It wasn't necessarily bad, but then it was, you're just not lining up anymore. And I want both of us to be happy, so let's just not. Maybe it's just friends. Don't stress about it. But maybe you start to have that drift with a parent. Maybe you start to have that drift with a child. God forbid, maybe you start to have that drift with a spouse. And you start thinking self-preservation, individual, more than the collective goals of the group, whether that's your marriage, your family, your work environment, whatever that looks like. You're going to start to drift, and it's hard to pull that one back. It's almost impossible sometimes to pull that one back. Poor leaders are easily distracted. Poor leaders work on the wrong things. And you're all pretty good people, I think. So you're probably thinking, I don't work on bad things. That's that good to great concept that your leaders, you've probably read that book. Your life is probably filled with a lot of good things, but are they the best things that you should be working on? Next, you lose achievement and goal-oriented performers. If you stop paying attention to results, you will start losing top performers. They're going to start asking, what are we doing here? That's a unfortunate question to get. What are we doing here? We were just talking about it at our table. What happens when you were so confident in what you were doing, but like 2 or 3 people removed from you, they're like, what is going on here? You haven't paid attention. You haven't kept the vision in front of people. Lastly, team members start to just take care of themselves. And I equate this to poverty mindset, the fear that you're never going to have enough. And I know that sometimes in the workplace you can seem that you barely have enough to keep it going. You start to hoard your resources like we talked about. And slowly but surely you just lose complete sight of team. And everything begins to rise and fall on you. And hear me, I'm not saying self-help is bad. Self-care is good. I'm trying to learn in my 30s, sadly, for the first time, what self-care actually looks like. But you can't put yourself in a silo and have everything rise and fall on you. You need a team around you. We're not meant to do this by ourselves.
And so as we look at this of what's the root then, the root of inattention to results can be, this is, again, another tough pill to swallow, a bunch of these tonight. It's our ego and our politics. The ego of, yeah, this is about me, my achievements, my desires, my work, mine. And then my systems, the politics of like, okay, how do I do things? What's the rules in which I pursue my customs and my ministry or my team or my communication, the way that I go about things? Again, it's about my agenda. So when you are doing that, there's a losing of results on the team level. A losing of inattention to, okay, again, we talked about earlier, keep the main thing the main thing. If you are so fixated on your pursuits, let me make it personal. When I think about me and Gateway Student Ministries, GSM, one of my biggest fears is that GSM becomes its own church. And it's not. It's never meant to be. We are Gateway Student Ministries. Gateway, the emphasis, we are an extension, we are a ministry of Gateway Church. And so if Tony gets too wrapped up in building the youth ministry and having the best leaders and the best programs and the best attendance and the best hoopla, everything about it, and I'm losing, and it's pulling away from the bigger picture of Gateway, I'm doing it wrong. Poorly wrong. And so is there a chance that within your own context that your goals are unaligning from the big picture of your team? That's the thing that we need to be really, really honest about. So let's look at some wins. Some wins are this. Number one is you retain achievement-oriented employees. Again, that can seem simple and basic, but this idea of like if we are striving for big achievements and big goals, you're going to retain those people who are thinking that way versus the ones who are achievement-oriented. They're going to leave because they're like, it's just a bunch of individuals doing their own thing. They're not a team, and they're going to want to leave. Individualistic behavior is minimized. Again, it's not about me, it's about we. It's not about me, it's about we. Avoidance of distraction. I'm not saying that you can never have a distractible moment. It's never that you can have a squirrel moment. It's never that you can have an ADD moment. Oh, that happens. I get it. Been there, done that. But that there's a focus in what we are doing together. Avoidance of distraction. Lastly, measure success and failure accurately. Measure success and failure accurately. It's really easy to measure success because we know what success is, but what about failure? Sometimes we're really quick to say, oh man, everything just sucked. Everything was no, was there stuff that was good that we can measure and say, no, there was some wins in there. And there's something that we can celebrate. So we're measuring success and failure accurately. Again, you have eyes. You can read that last as we wrap up our time here together. But here's the thing. Here's the well, actually, I have to get past all these then, huh? Boom, 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 boom. There we go. So here's the 5. Here's our pyramid. We could sit on this forever and ever and discussion after discussion. It's a fire hose. I told you up front it's going to be. But as we conclude, Johnny, bro, do you have anything to wrap up our time with? Any encouragement, any divine word from the Lord that you want to give?
No pressure. We also didn't practice this last thing. I think before you guys all showed up, Tony was like, hope we wing the ending well. I didn't think about it until right now. I probably should have done that. But I think the whole night my mind keeps going back to so many of the leaders that we look up in the Bible and we read about. People that were pillars of what we've chosen to believe and chosen to use to raise our children. And most of them, all of them, were major disasters in the leadership department at some point in their life. Probably the majority of their life. Peter could not figure it out. And Jesus said, I'm going to build my church on you. David could not figure out. You're after my heart, dude. So if you got beat up tonight with a lot of recognition of like, I don't have a lot of this figured out. No one does. But it doesn't mean we get to just let that go and be like, this is my life. Like, we're called to something more. We can change the course of what we're doing. If you need to talk yourself up, if you need to go home and just get in the mirror with yourself and say, you got this. I can do something. I can get better at this. God is excited for you to do that. He has designed you to have a next gear. I really believe that you don't even maybe know you have. But why wouldn't you want to try it out? What if you do have that gear? Imagine your life if you figured some of this out. It'd be wild. Imagine where your church would go. Imagine where your family would go. Imagine where your company would go if you were just rowing that boat with a good team, leading well. That gets me stoked. So let's get it.
And I think that it's super easy to sit with all this stuff. And let me just validate you for a second. If there is any glimmer of anxiety right now, stress, overwhelming feeling, you're welcomed here, and you belong here if you're feeling that. Because again, we just went through a lot. So here's the challenge, here's the task, here's the ask. Is that you take this packet, and you sift through it, and you think through what is your one key takeaway. You're not trying to change the world. You're not trying to change and uproot your whole team in full structure. No. Baby steps. One step. One takeaway. What's that going to be? And then once you've worked on that one takeaway, okay, go to the next one. And then the next one. One step at a time. Maybe there's one particular dysfunction that just hit you like a ton of bricks. And you're like, I got to go focus on that personally. Go do that. Maybe it's one within your team and you have this conviction of, man, I got to go talk to my boss about this. Not in pointing the finger, but just in processing. Here's what I'm sensing. Here's what I'm seeing coming out of this seminar. Go do that. Maybe it's a processing, dialoguing conversation with your spouse. Great. Go do that. Maybe it's just something between you and God. Go do that. But what happens out of this moment right here when we pray and we're done and you get to leave, it's on you. What are you going to do with it? We just went through this whole book. Now you don't have to go buy it. You're welcome. But what are you going to do with this information? One step at a time. I love that you're here. Thank you for investing 2 hours of your evening to invest in your own leadership, maybe even the future of the company that you work with, and to dream up what could happen if you put some of these practicals into practice, some of these steps into action. Johnny, can you pray for us and we're done?
Yeah, Father, thank you for the things we heard. Thank you for the Holy Spirit's movement tonight in our souls and our minds and our guts, the things that we were hit with. I would ask for insane clarity with those one things, those takeaways, that even in the next moments or the next night before our heads touch the pillow tonight, that we would maybe write that down. I would ask that you maybe convict someone in this room right now to tell someone about it before they get home. Maybe they need to go tell their wife or their husband. Maybe they need to send an email to their boss to get that accountability, to take a next step in becoming the leader that you have shaped them to be. Let us not be timid. Let us walk into that boldly. Thank you for going ahead of us. Thank you for being behind us, beside us. Give us safety as we get home. Help us all to make it there and to start tomorrow with excitement and not dread. In your name, amen.
Amen.